today's going to be kind of not a very serious interview, but I want this to be a different vibe.
Okay.
Okay? Because we haven't done this in a while, but I am the interviewer.
Oh.
And you are the interviewee.
Okay.
So I'm going for like a vibe of like, this is about to be November, so this is kind of the time of important interviews and everything like that, and people really getting kind of grilled and everything. But
grilled
as in like, man, you gotta field some tough questions.
Okay.
I mean, especially, I'm saying, I know you're not running for anything, but this is election season. So
I am running for a lot.
So let's get in that vibe.
I should be running.
So the interview has to be inside of that kind of vibe. Like, oh my God, this is gonna be.
I'm sharp.
This is a hard hitting interview.
Okay.
And, my reputation as an interviewer, you're like, oh, my God, like this person asks hard questions, but then they're also nice. Like, I don't know what to expect. So you're walking into that. Okay. And this is the first time. This is the first time we meet.
Okay.
Hi. Welcome.
Thank you.
We've been wanting to get you on here a long time. Thank you so much for finally agreeing to come on. I know you're very busy, everything like that. So I just had a few questions.
Okay.
I know we don't have much time, so I'm just gonna get right to it. Sewing.
Yeah.
Let's just start where we start. Like sewing. Like, what about it? Like, what about it got you started with it?
Well, do you want the whole backstory?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I just start wherever you start. We have limited time, Claudia. I'm so glad we have your time today, but it's like,
I'll give you like a little, because
I have a lot of questions.
So, sewing's like a family thing, right? My dad was a denim distributor, and I was around sewing machines, more industrial sewing machines than like a home machine, but that was what was accessible to me. So I feel like I really utilized the sewing machine to basically to do like an expression of self, an expression of like, having cool clothes, and a lot of it out of necessity. And I just was always very anxious. And so I felt that like doing things with my hands really like helped with that. And so I feel like anything that I do very repetitive with my hands is really addicting to me, where I'm like, whoa, this is really fun. And sewing is one of those things. So
when was the first time that you saw a sewing machine?
I don't think that there was like a time that I can remember that I didn't see one. So I feel like it was my whole upbringing. Like it was like, I don't ever remember not seeing a sewing machine.
And when your thoughts of a sewing machine, the positive, negative, in the middle, what are your thoughts about the sewing machine?
I mean, I think it's like the coolest thing that someone could have invented. I mean, it is harder to use than a saw, So it's like, it's very delicate, but it's also very strong. So then there's a lot of precision involved with it. There's a lot of like very fine motor skills. And so if someone that sews really well, they have very, very good fine motor skills,
When was the first time, and how young were you when you first used a sewing machine?
Like a sewing machine? Sewing
machine. One that was kind of a dangerous sewing machine. One that could actually...
Like 12.
12?
Yeah. An industrial sewing machine.
Where'd you find it?
It was in the garage in our house. So my dad, was producing stuff to sell at the Swami every weekend. And, I was seeing him in the garage all the time. And I basically was like, hey, why don't I ask him if he needs help? So I was like, do you need help? And he was like, sure. And so he's like, cut elastic. And so I cut elastic and stuff like that. And then as I started investing more time with him, he basically would have me sit in an industrial sewing machine that would sew buttons. And so it would basically like go and like, do the X's, or maybe just go back and forth if it was like 2 holes and stuff. And so it was like this gigantic machine, and then you would push on like the pedal and it would go, and so it would like just freaking like fill in like all those holes with threads. And it was freaking cool. And so I had to mark the button, utilizing the buttonholes. I had to mark the hole, so then the buttons could be sewn there. And it was cool. I really liked it. I was like, whoa. But I really, there was a point where I guess there was settings on the machine for like 2 or 4 button holes. And so if you didn't set it right and like you put like a 2-hole button in there and it was for a 4-hole, like it would obviously destroy the button, you know? And I just remember like starting to sew like in this time frame, and my dad didn't switch over the setting from like one to the other. In it, like as soon as I put in like the button and then started it, it just shattered the whole entire button. And I was like, whoa. And so it was like just wild to see, because it was, you know, it was a button. It was like a good sized button, like probably like an inch or something. And it just freaking completely broke it. So I was like, whoa, that was like, it was a really rude awakening of like, whoa, this machine is so strong that it could just break a button like that. And so that was when I really like became very like aware of like these machines go super, super fast, but they also, you know, you have to be very careful that you're not putting your hands in specific places, because there is a needle that is going up and down, and you can hurt yourself if you're not paying attention.
So if that's the case, if you knew this was kind of a machine that could be kind of risky,
Yeah.
what drew you to that machine as opposed to, let's say, a PlayStation or Nintendo? Like, why at such a young age were you messing with this machine instead of messing with
Like
a game
toy?
box? Yeah.
Well, it was mainly because my dad was like, well, you're not doing anything and you're like of age to freaking be able to operate something. Like, he was like, come and do this. And I was like, okay. And so, you know, I just never, I was always good, and like my parents needed something and I would have to do it. And, you know.
So you
he
didn't feel like you were missing out?
No, I never felt like I was missing out. I feel like I didn't have like a time frame that I did play video games and all that. But, you know, I feel like I grew out of it, you know, really quick. And then after that, I was just like, I wasn't interested in like a screen. Like, I wasn't interested in like playing a video game or like watching a movie for long periods of time. Like, I needed something like not screen related. So I feel like anytime that I got to do stuff that wasn't like that, then I was happy.
So you get bored easily?
Yes.
You need something to do to keep your mind going?
All the time.
All the time. And
Still
usually
now.
sewing, so just to divert a little bit, I know sewing is the passion and we're trying to find the origin of where that started, but
Yeah.
then also to divert a little bit, what else besides sewing do you do to kind of also not be bored?
Nothing.
There's nothing. There's nothing. So you're saying sewing is everything.
I mean, I enjoy it a lot. I feel like obviously when I'm not sewing, I'm spending time with you guys, and I really enjoy like walks, going on a walk, and mainly like going on a walk and talk. I feel like that feels good, like just to be like moving. But I do feel that like sewing has become my life.
Is that good or is that bad? Remember, I'm asking the hard-hitting questions here.
I think it's good. I mean, I love it. I do love it a lot, in the sense where I'm like, wow, I get to create a lot of really awesome things. And, you know, the beautiful thing is that people like them and they are willing to support me and, you know, all that stuff. So it does feel really nice, and I love it. I feel like it gives me a lot of self-worth.
Fulfillment. Do you find fulfillment in what you do?
Yes.
How so?
Well, I have like a whole career. You know, it's like I have like a whole career where it's like I have a business, you know, and then I teach, and I feel like I'm a good representation for like the sewing community, and a good representation in the way where it's like I want seriously everyone to learn how to sew. So knowing that, I want to make it easy for you to want to get started. Even if it's not a traditional way, I want for you to feel like you could get started, because it is a skill. So people think that the first time that they're going to do it, that it's going to be perfect, but you're not. And so you have to be able to like not have that feeling of like it's going to be perfect, you know?
not to interject, but
Yeah.
I would think that if it was so easy that right away you did it, and then it was perfect, wouldn't that would just make it totally, it would take all the mystery and fun out of it, because it's that process, knowing that it is a skill, you know that every time you're going to do it, you're going to see improvement, as opposed to you being 100%.
Well, most people want to be 100%, and that's their expectation. And so for me, like, I feel that I always tell people, enjoy the process of it, right? Like, enjoy the process of, like, of making time for it, of, like, doing a thing, of actually doing the thing and being like, yay, this is great. And that feeling, right? Like, the feeling of, like, I just made something is a very, very beautiful feeling, you know? So it's like understanding that, but then also wanting to basically get better. It's like most people, like, they do, once they get into that, they're like, oh my God, I want to get better. But it's like you have to strive to try to get better. And so
It's actually inverse thinking is what I'm thinking, is that you go into it thinking that, oh, I want to be good right away, but actually the strength is that you're not good right away, and that you give yourself that time to build a skill over time.
Yeah, because it's like, it's not, sewing is a very complex thing in the way that it's not just the act of sewing that you're doing. It's like it's not just the act of sewing. The complicated part about it is the construction. So being able to have a mind that you could see in, like, a three-dimensional form. So if you could break things apart and look at, like, a body and be like, this is how I could form a three-dimensional shape. And so if you have that ability of being able to put things together and you like puzzles, sewing is definitely for you, because that is the difficult part. Because most people, they see, like, a finished good, like, they'll be like, they'll see your t-shirt or they'll see, like, a bag, and they'll automatically think, if I do it like this is how it's going to look. But there's actually a process to, like, finishes and all that kind of stuff that people don't know the process of doing. So then once you're able to understand that everything is sewn inside out and it becomes a three-dimensional form or whatever, then you're able to really see it in, like, a bigger scope and have a better understanding. The act of sewing, that's the easiest part of it. That's the easiest part. All you're doing is basically, like, simulated driving. You know, it's like you're pushing the pedal, and, like, if you're concerned about sewing straight lines, they have guides now. You could just feed it through and you're fine. But the construction, building something, like, trying to make sure that it looks good and clean and, you know, professional, is more of the fineness of it.
What is it like to be inside of your mind?
It's pretty wild.
What is it like in there?
I feel like sometimes it doesn't really stop. So then I have to really be like, okay, how can I stop a little bit, you know, where I'm like, okay, because there is so much stuff that's happening and there's so many thoughts. And I feel like the more busier I get, the more kind of, like, difficult it is to process stuff. And so for me, like, really just understanding, like, okay, this is something that you really, like, enjoy, and that you enjoy it because you're like, whoa, like, you get to inspire people to want to do it. But it's also one of those things where I'm like, you know, if people could really, like, see my mind, I feel like a really good representation of it is that little yarn square that I did. I crocheted, like, this little piece. And I feel like that is a good representation of my mind, because there's so much, like, there's so many rows, but there's so much color. And so in my mind, there's, like, this feeling of, like, color and, like, you know, a lot of stuff happening, and, you know, great ideas, and then ideas that you're like, that's, what the hell are you thinking? And then there's, like, you know, thoughts of, like, I really want to do this. And so there's, like, so many, like files, you know, but
Currently, what is your purpose?
I feel like currently my purpose is, you know, I don't know. I feel like currently, like, you know, my purpose is to to basically to be like the best version of myself, right? In the way where I'm like, all right, what is going to make me happy? Like truly what is going to make me happy? So I'm like happy, and then if I'm happy, then it's like that energy could radiate out, right? Because it's like I have to be selfish enough to basically think of myself first, and think about myself first in the way where I'm like, hey, what's gonna make me happy? Like, there's no point in like having like this life in a very, very fragile life, or even like a short life or whatever life, and not want to basically be the best version of yourself. And so I do feel that like, you know, running a business, doing all this stuff is not easy. It's like there's like a gigantic risk. But it's like you also have to basically be like, dude, like I don't want to live like this life and then be like regret, regret being like I always wanted to do this thing. And it's like I can't tell you like that I've said like I've always wanted to do this thing because I always do the thing, So I feel like, I'm definitely crazy for sure. It's in the name. But I do feel like I'm not going to live this life with the thought of being enslaved to this idea that it's like I have to live in fear of freaking surviving, So for me, I'm like, dude, like almost like living like a life of like you only live once and you gotta, maybe it's not a great decision, maybe, but it's like it's a decision that I will make sure that I don't have regrets.
Speaking of that, taking us back about 12 years now.
Yeah.
Talk about or tell us about the fact of opening Loka as a handmade store.
Yeah.
What was you spoke about risk before and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. What was the game plan with that? I mean, were you trying to strike it rich?
I mean, I don't think I've ever wanted to be like, oh, I want to be fucking rich or any of that kind of stuff. Like, I feel like the whole purpose of the store was a reason for me to show that I could be successful without going to college, because I didn't go to college. So I always thought, well, if I wanted to be successful, I'll just own a business. That's really like what my thought was when before I even opened up a business, because I remember having that thought when I was at SCOE, and that was like my last job, right? And I remember thinking, like, I was like sitting there, and I remember thinking like, people have been here for a really long time, and I think one of my friends was like celebrating like 10 years or 15 or something like that. And
this was your old job?
This is my old job, the last job that I had before I moved to San Diego. And I just remember thinking like, I'm like, wow, she's been here for like X amount of years, more than 10. And I was like, and so I started thinking like, what would that look like for me? Do I want to be here for like, because I think I was like going on like 3 years or 4 or something. It was right before I left. And I just remember thinking like, is that like what I want to do? Is that do I want to stay here? What does that look like for me here? Because I feel like my boss was like really mindful that I was like super creative, and so she would give me like creative jobs, like decorate like the board, decorate the freaking, like stuff like that, where she knew, she's like, this person is creative, give her creative jobs. And they actually started like a little like Christmas market, because I made stuff, and they're like, there's other people that make stuff, let's have like a Christmas market, and all the employees could like sell their stuff, And so I was like, wow. So they were really supportive of me and like the things that I was doing. But I was also like thinking like, like that could be my life, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I was just kind of like, it didn't create excitement for me where I was like, wow, that's going to be like a great life. It was more where I was like, I just kind of saw it as like just slowing down and like, just kind of not exciting for me, So for me, like the thought of like what would I look like as a successful person? And like successful has been like a term that I've obviously like struggled with, right? Where it's like successful, like you get to basically like say what success is for you, you know? And so for me, like I feel like, there was like a point in my life where I was like, yeah, I want to be successful, but I didn't even know what that meant, like, or where that level would be. And like, I know like saying like, this is like when you have made it, and it kind of like seems like almost like a negative or like, cause it's like, I feel like for me, like I'm always like wanting to grow and wanting to do and, that kind of stuff. And I'm always like motivated and inspired and, just want to do stuff. And, for me, that thought is like a scary thought, of like basically being like, where do you feel that you could cap or stop or, that you've made it? And I feel like there's, that's like the part where you're like, ooh, so what if when you're there, like, then what happens? Like, is there still growth or is there still, so it's like, I think that's like a scary part for me.
Can you talk about one time when life has humbled you?
Yeah, I could talk about like a bunch.
Just one.
Okay. When SDG&E turned off my lights for like, I think it was like a month and you had to bail me out. And it was so hard.
Can you elaborate?
Okay, hold on.
Hold on. I should have a tissue.
No.
Oh, okay.
So I obviously didn't have money to pay my SDG&E bill. And I know like it makes me emotional because, it's just money, it's not like someone fucking died, so it's like I have to remind myself of that, because those are the things that really like stress me out, so I kept getting like the bills and I just kind of like thought like there'll be a time where I could pay it, I had to pay other things and all that kind of stuff. And so I was like in a weird place of like trying to figure myself like financially, so I really was like, okay, I'll figure it out and I'll pay for it. And obviously every single month it's just going to grow. So you're not like putting yourself in a great situation, which at the time, like now you could just call them and be like, hey, this is what's happening or whatever, And so they put like a little like tag on like my door and I was like, what does that mean? And so I like show up and there's like a little yellow tag on like the door and I was like, what does that mean? And so I go inside and like I turn on the lights and they won't turn on. And I was like, oh shit, they fucking turned off. And so I looked at the yellow paper and it was like, we've turned off your lights. And I was like, oh my God, they freaking turned off my lights. And you have to call them and you have to make a payment and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes they go out that same day and sometimes they don't. And I think I was like, I think I owed them like $800. And I was just like, I don't have $800. And they were like, we need for you to pay like, like at least half, And so I was like, dude, I don't even have $400. So I was like, fuck. So, I was like, I'm like so fucked right now because I don't freaking have, and I have to freaking work. And then that's when you realize like how important like things are, where you're like, oh shit, like you need electricity to like run your business. You need electricity to like fucking cook and like have lights and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, I had deadlines, I was like, I have to have like these things done. And I was just like, I'll just go into like into the house. And I had like, obviously like I've always had like mobile, like sewing machines, like home machines that I could just take home and do stuff in case that I needed to do it, So I was like, okay. And so it was just, like a really difficult time, to basically be like, where you feel very defeated, because you try really hard, and then all of a sudden you're like, dude, like, you have to pay stuff and you have to do all that stuff. And I feel like, sometimes people don't understand how difficult it could be, where you're like, oh, everything's so great. They have a business. They must be making so much money. And you're like, you're so funny, but it is one of those things where being a business owner is one of the most difficult things that you could do, because you're really banking on yourself, and you're like really banking on yourself because you're like, you believe that you could do something great, and you feel that people will support you and all that kind of stuff, and so it's difficult because, it could be a good time period and it could not be a good time period. And so it's like, and they're both going at the same time. And so it's like, you have to understand like the market, what people want, what people don't want, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, for me as an artist, it's hard because I'm like, I don't really care what you like. I'm mainly making it because it's like, I like it and it makes me happy. And it's like, I hope you like it too, but if you don't, then it's like, well, I'm sorry, so, but it is, I feel like that those things, I'm grateful that they do happen, that you get humbled, because I've always told you, like, if I was younger with this success, right, I really do believe that I would have had an ego. And I'm really glad that I have had those very humbling experiences of like, you ain't shit right now. And it's like, you're like, oh, damn. And it's ego, because it's like, you have to think about it like, okay, it's a fucking electrical bill. And yes, you need electricity, but it's like, at the same time, it's like, this is fucking money. This is money. It's not fucking someone that you lost. It's fucking money. And it's like, to be enslaved to that thought is like, it's fucking crazy, so it's like, how do we break away from that? How do we break away to think about it in a different way, where you're like, there is an ugliness to it, but it's like, you have to be able to like see it in a different way.
Well, I do see a lot of duality within you.
Yeah.
Because you do have, a soft side. You do wear your heart on your shoulder and you're very emotional. But you also have a lot of inner strength.
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
My mom.
How so?
I don't know. Like, I feel like she's always made it work. You're just like, and sometimes I'm like, I'm like, she had like 6 kids and like a mortgage and like was getting paid like $6.25 at the time. I think I was like making $6.75. So I was making 50 cents more than my mom. But for me, I was like, dude, like, she makes it work. We every single day we had home cooked meals. There was only one day out of the week that she thought it would be a treat to like, we would go to Jack in the Box or like McDonald's and stuff. A place we could walk to because she didn't drive. And I don't know, like, I always think about it and I'm like, dude, if she could do it, she doesn't speak the language. She doesn't speak the language. She makes minimum wage. She has a mortgage. She has 6 kids. And she was basically the sole provider of the family. And if she could do it, like, how could I not do it? Like, how could I not do it? How could I not do it? Like, she made it work. And I have 1 kid. I'm an educated woman. I speak 2 languages. And I'm very resourceful. How could I not do it? Like, how could I not do it? Like, if my mom did that, and I feel like that's what we're all striving for, to have like a home, to buy a home, if she did it with all that like going on, it's like, I always think, I'm like, well, why couldn't I do the thing that I want to do? Like, it doesn't seem so crazy then, and it's like, I know I have like that fighter and that like just freaking like just keep going, like kind of like spirit, because I come from a small town called Los Guerreros, so it's like I know that I have that freaking spirit, where I'm just gonna freaking just keep going and like just freaking just do it and do it because it's like it's in me and I could do anything. And like that is in everyone. You just have to know that. You have to take inspiration from like your parents, and basically be like, look at their hardships, and like understanding like those hardships and like our our parents, right? And then basically being like, whoa, what was their hardship? And then like, what is like your hardship? And then making sure your kid doesn't have those, and then just basically being like, all right, how can we make sure that like your that your lineage is growing in the sense where you're like, we want our daughter to be the best version of us. And if we are the best version of our parents, like imagine what she's gonna be. And like that is like very inspiring to basically be like, whoa, so
That brings us to current day, installations, fashion shows, workshops, textile art, like there's a lot going on.
A lot
going on in the world of Loka. So just kind of tell me where we are.
Yeah.
And where this is all going.
So currently with our workshops, we have been doing a lot of workshops here in the studio. We started a really fun denim workshop where it's like you bring a pair of pants and you convert them into a tote, which has been a really, really fun workshop. And then we have our group workshop with our tote bag. And so you make a tote out of like recycled vintage fabrics, which has been a lot of fun too. So with these workshops, we cap it at 6 people to make sure that everyone's getting the proper amount of attention and just feeling motivated and inspired to make the project and to do well. And people always do, so which makes me really happy. And we've been having those. We're trying to bring embroidery back like ASAP because I have a really fun project I want to do with that. So we've been doing those. And then outside of the studio, we've been working at arts, teaching that workshop for our teens, which is called Thrift Flip, which has been a lot of fun. I believe we're on our maybe 6th week there, and so it's a lot of fun. Get to see a lot of teens make really cool stuff, which is very empowering. And then I just started at the SDCCE campus at the Point Loma campus, which is a really, really cool campus. I really, really like it. It's been a lot of fun. I just started on Tuesday, so yesterday was my 2nd day, which has been really fun. That has been a very intimidating process for me, but it's really cool. I am teaching industrial sewing there, which is really cool. And the reason why it's really cool is because it's free, and it is a 2-month program. It's Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we're going to do a lot of really cool stuff within that project. And I'm excited because we got a really good batch of peeps in the class. That was workshops.
Yes.
Installations.
Okay.
We just installed, and we're going to deinstall today, our Sacred Planet denim install that we did, which is really exciting because that was a community project that we built together, and it was really cool. Like, it's all out of denim, and it's a 10 by 10 foot denim tapestry that weighs about 40 pounds, and it was a community effort, and it was a lot of fun to have a lot of people in the studio, and it was just an amazing experience. So we're excited to pick it up. But if you're interested in borrowing it for your library or buying it for your library, or if the city of San Diego wants to buy it, go for it. It's definitely for sale. But we definitely don't want it to sit somewhere. We want it to be hung. And so if anyone's interested in borrowing it, it's totally available. You can hang it up anywhere you want. But yeah, so that is our installations that we've done recently.
So what about the clothing brand Loka?
The clothing.
What is your inspiration going forward with that?
So we got invited to go to Denver, Colorado for a really cool fashion show. So we're going to be a part of that. And so that happens November 2nd. So we'll be in Colorado for that, which is really excited. I've never been to Denver, and I heard it's going to be cold, but it's okay. I'm down for it. And it's very exciting. I know I've been really busy with like getting curriculums and all that kind of stuff together. And it is one of those things where it's like creating is like one of my things that I really enjoy doing. And so when I don't get to do it, it really becomes one of those things where I want to do it even more. And I feel like sometimes we need like a little, like almost like a break to then feel like refreshed to want to do it and have like this re-passion. Not that the passion went away, but that re-passion of like, oh my God, I'm going to do this. And I haven't been able to do it. So it feels like a refreshing thing. So tonight, I'm actually going to work on some stuff and have new inventory and things like that, which I'm really excited about because I haven't been in the studio. I've been in, but not like really in. And so, yeah, I'm excited for it.
Give it a second.
Yeah.
Give it a second if you could.
Yeah.
Okay.
Action.
Okay, so we're back from our commercial break. Thank you for bringing us up to speed.
Yeah.
Going back to the origins of sewing and when you opened Loka, and then also, to current times where you've kind of transitioned into a textile artist.
Yeah.
And you brought us, up to the current times. But for, the last portion of this podcast, I want to try to talk about things that haven't happened yet.
Yeah.
So we've talked about things that have happened. We've explored your past. We talk about things that are currently happening.
Yeah.
But what hasn't happened yet?
What
hasn't happened yet? That not that you're predicting anything or anything like that, but what is the vision for the future going forward?
So I obviously love doing textile art, right? Where it's like, I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm full of myself, but it's like I really put a lot of intention and like passion into creating the jackets and the one-of-ones and things like that. And so for me, there is that true feeling of like, this is art, right? It belongs in like a space to be able to like, for people to be able to enjoy it, but also for people to be able to wear it, And so there's a lot of that kind of like feeling for me of what, when I'm looking around the studio, I'm like, these are all like my little art pieces that like, there's no reason why they don't belong in a museum, and maybe that's like being a little full of yourself, but I do believe that I would want to see myself more in those kind of spaces, of just being represented as like as a textile artist in a space like that, because I do feel that adds a lot of value to the sewing movement, and talking to yesterday I was talking to some of my industrial sewing students, and I was like, it's harder to find someone that sews than there is like a plumber or an electrician. So like, why aren't we valued? Like, that's a true question. Like, why aren't we valued? So I really want to change that.
Make people that sew or sewing or the skill of sewing more valued.
Yeah. Like where people actually like value it, and that it's actually, it could be art, and it could be like all these things and people would appreciate it more, and so that whole thing where it creates a lot of value to the whole movement.
How do you plan to do that? How do you plan to add value?
I'm just going to go around and start punching people in the throat if they don't like it.
Wow. Okay. So by force.
By force.
Okay.
No, really, I feel like we've talked about it so many times, right? Creating like a movement, like creating that movement of like just people that are sewing, people that are in a sewing industry, people that are in this movement with us, and basically being able to show that there is a big movement happening, and that we could take things back and basically educate people of why it's important to support people that sew, or people that like are doing the upcycling or recycling of textiles, things like that, because we have to be able to be strong together to create like this movement to showcase why it's important to be able to do those things. So more on an educational standpoint of like really educating people of like, hey, we have an excess of clothes. This is why. And your the clothes that you buy, it's very inexpensive for these reasons. This is what a livable wage for someone that is going into the industry has to look like, and we have to be able to support that, because there is a lot of necessity for it, and necessity in the sense that there's a tailor has become like a very like dying kind of thing. And so that industry, it's a great industry to be in. It's very secure, it's you have job security for sure, and it's just one of those things that it is a dying thing. And so we really want to make sure that people understand why these things need to be supported.
The sewing industry.
Yeah.
But do you think that it's going to change in the next 5 to 10 years?
I do think so.
As people who are starting to sew now,
yes,
this new generation grows up and picks their profession, do you think there might be more cut and sew designers that are local, like Sew Loka, to their cities and beyond? And that will be another source of fashion for people, an alternative to fast fashion?
Yeah, especially with that new bill that's happening, right? The SB 707, that's going to be like a really good thing for a lot of people, because a lot of people have been working in that realm of like recycling clothes, recycling blankets, recycling curtains, doing all that kind of stuff. So it's like being in California and in the forefront of like changing something, which, there's still a lot that we have to do in order for us to really talk about like textile recycling and all that. But it's a good step for us.
I do have listeners from all over the world, so please let them know what SB 707 is.
So it's basically a new bill, and what's happening with this new bill is that it's going to basically anyone that like does manufacturing or production, it's going to have to register as a nonprofit and take and use clothes.
Is this in California only?
This is in California only, yeah. So there would be more drop-off locations for you to basically go and drop off your clothes and things like that. So, which is good, and then that manufacturer, or are these moving too much? Oh, sorry. Then that manufacturer is going to be able to recycle them in the way that they would want to recycle it. So, it's really up to them how they want to recycle the textiles.
So that seems like it's one step in the right direction of battling textile waste. Mm-hmm. But there's also places for like Sew Loka and other designers that are using recycled fabrics and teaching sewing. I mean, it's all part of the
movement.
And what is the movement called?
Slow fashion.
Slow fashion.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Slow. Well, actually, I was going to say slow is kind of like, you feel like you're moving slow.
Yeah.
But actually, slow and steady wins the race.
Slow and steady does win the race.
So fast fashion might seem like they're racking it up right now, because the fast fashion companies, I mean, it just seems like from an outsider's perspective that they are racking up the dough.
Yeah, but you're, again, being enslaved to the thought of something, right? And you're like, money, yes, it's a great resource, but it's like you're racking in the dough off of like other people's backs, that like you're exploiting a whole population of people. Like, you could sleep at night knowing that. That's
I'm just
That's
asking the
not.
questions. I
No,
feel
I
like
know,
these
but
are
I'm
direct.
just, you
I don't
know.
own a fast fashion brand, and I don't know anybody who does. I was just basically saying, yes, that it does seem like companies like Zara and other ones that they've, made a couple of bucks.
For
But you're
sure.
saying that this was done with there was exploitation involved of
Yeah, for
others.
sure. Yeah. Okay, back in the 80s, we used to make 85% of our clothing here in the US. Now in 2024, we only make 2%. So it's like that whole industry went somewhere else so it could be cheaper. And so it's like, okay, cool. And they created like the sewing and manufacturing and production and all that as an unskilled trade where it's like anyone can do it. But it's like that's not true. So I have the opportunity as like an industrial sewing instructor to basically be able to change that and to be able to be like, oh, we could bring back manufacturing. And like manufacturing, it looks so different now because we get to decide what it looks like. So that's the awesome part about it. It's really like redefining what we want, especially like for me to teach an industrial sewing class, right? With the emphasis of sustainability. Like I think that that's freaking awesome because most places that are not, that are manufacturing and doing production and stuff like that, they don't care anything about sustainability or like recycling or doing any of that kind of stuff. And so it's really important to be able to know that that is something that is very important.
If I go into a social setting, in a group of people, and
Yeah.
I see them, on like a daily basis, if I wear the same outfit twice in a row, will I be okay?
I mean, why would you not?
Well, I just don't want the group to think that I'm wearing the same outfit or
So what?
that I don't have enough outfits
I
or
wore the same outfit 3 days in a row last week.
so.
And to me, I'm like, I don't, I'm
But what do
not,
you do if the group starts whispering and pointing and laughing? And
they're
what do you
not
do?
your real friends.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like, that is like a big thing, right? Where it's like, I feel that's more like obviously like school age kids that would do something like that where they would be like, oh my God, they were wearing the same outfit yesterday.
But sometimes I've heard that this happens with adults too. So I'm just saying that, it's, yes, that's schoolyard mentality, but, in
But it's also,
2024, I think that could be anybody,
yeah, but it's also
any
like
age.
one of those things where it's like, are you really concerned about people freaking talking about your outfit? Like, it's one of those things where it's like, look, I would rather be more mindful of what I have to wear that's going to be good quality, that's going to last me a long time, that's not going to be a lot, than like for you to for us to basically be like, let's have so much clothes and let's destroy our planet because we want more. Like that seems so nuts. It's like instead of thinking, because it's like the reality is we have 5 outfits that we wear, and like everything else in the closet we don't wear. So why not just have those 5 outfits and have like a cleaner closet? But it's like
Yes.
we don't do that because it's like we are basically programmed to think that the more stuff we have, the happier that we will be, and that's not true.
Yeah. And sometimes if you get a new outfit that you haven't seen before,
Yeah,
some people might give some compliments.
maybe.
So,
Yeah.
and if they gave a compliment to the outfit and you wear it again, you're
Yeah.
not going to get that second compliment.
No, but I do feel that like, it being able to be very how do you call it? Creative with like your outfits, right? Where it's like, oh, maybe you have that shirt, but maybe you put something else over it, or maybe you wear like a hoodie under it, or maybe there's so many ways of being able to like style something. So it's like for me, I'm not like really like I just don't really buy it that we need so much stuff, and it's like if you do want to buy stuff, there's nothing wrong with like buying it new, but making sure that the context of that textile is something that's going to last a long time. And so we are seeing clothes as like something where it's like, I'm done with it. And then you just throw it out, you know? And it's like, wait a minute. This is a living thing. It takes about like hundreds of years for this to decompose in a landfill. That's like longer than how you will live.
And isn't made sometimes clothing made with a plant?
Yes.
And
Cotton.
Plants are alive, right?
Yeah, cotton.
Yeah.
It's a plant. You know, silk is another natural fiber. You have linen. Denim is part of that family because it's like in the cotton family. Wool. Those are all natural textiles, you know, and they're beautiful and they last forever. Anything synthetic is going to fall apart. Synthetic is plastic.
So synthetic is fast fashion.
Yeah. So synthetics, right? Where it's like polyester. So polyester, nylon, spandex, all those, they're all like in the family of plastics because they have to have that stretch. And so understanding that what happens to like plastic when you heat it up?
It melts.
Okay. So you're wearing clothes that's made out of little plastic things. How long is it going to last when you throw it in the hot water to wash it and then you dry it in hot to dry it? So it's not going to last a long time. That piece of clothing is just meant to last a little bit. But it's not like if it all deteriorates and it just becomes vapor. It doesn't.
Well, that's the thing. It's because I think for some people that piece of clothing, when it's the same price as that cup of coffee you're drinking, it becomes less like, okay, well, I wore it, and then if it gets messed up in the wash, whatever. Just like, okay, I paid $6 for this cup of coffee, I'm done with it.
Yeah.
Whatever. Except the coffee is disposed of way faster than the tank top.
Yes.
Or the dress or whatever. So, but it is the same price. So you can start equating like, well, I paid $6 for this coffee. I paid $6 for this top. They're both disposable.
Yes. But you also have to understand, I don't know a lot about the coffee industry, so I don't know if it's like one of those things where it's like, I know that there's a lot of beans that are being like sourced here like in ethical ways, right? And so everyone has that in their coffee shop, that it's like very ethical and all that kind of stuff. And there is a whole fair trade system that was created in order for us to have coffee from other countries, right? And so, which is good. That's good. We also want to be able to have that kind of like really fair trade where it's not just like, hey, let's pay them nothing and then we get a product.
We reap the benefits of their
exploitation.
Need, yeah.
You know, because they need a job. They need to be able to provide for their family.
Yeah.
And so thinking about it in the way where it's like that $5 for the tank top is not the true cost. What the true cost is like polluted waterways, diseases, you know, all these things that you're getting all these things, right?
But it's harder. What makes it easier for people to partake in fast fashion, at least here in the States, is that I think a lot of those things you're talking about happens closer to where the production is.
Yes.
The polluted waterways.
It's in another country. But it's like, it's also understanding like if you don't see it, it doesn't mean that it's not happening. It's like, plus it's like, that's a fucking weird way of thinking about it where you're like, oh, since I can't see it, I can't, you know? So it's like we can't choose one thing, right? To basically be like, yes, let's do this and let's go for this team. And then when you're like okay with wearing cheap fast fashion clothes, like you just want to turn your cheek to it. So it's like you can't like be all gung-ho about one thing and then not when it's like you're reaping the benefits of it.
Yes, but I also have to interject and just speaking for all of my fellow humans out there.
Yeah.
Nobody's perfect.
No, I know. I totally know that. And like
I'm just speaking for humanity. I got your back, humanity.
I
know she's trying to shame you, but I got your back.
I'm not trying to shame anyone, but it is one of those things where it's like it is understanding that, you know, this bill's not going to change. Like, it's not going to freaking be like one of those things where it's like all of a sudden we're perfect, right? There's still a lot of conversations that we need to have, but it really is understanding and like people really thinking about where their clothes comes from. Because that is a true question that we want people to think about. Where does your clothes come from? And why does it cost that much? You know?
Or that little.
Exactly. Why does it cost that price? And so think about those kind of things. If you're buying something that costs like that much, it's not it's not good.
Somebody's paying the price somewhere.
And I know it sounds like weird, right? Because it's like I have a clothing brand and I sell like a t-shirt for $65 and people are always like, "Whoa." But it's like I need, this is like something where it's like I'm charging that to live to be able to live to have a wage that's livable, because so much goes into it. It's not just like a t-shirt. It's like there's so many things that go into it. There's so many years of experience. There's so much process that goes into it. So it's not just a t-shirt that you're like, it's just a t-shirt. It's like there's so many things that go into it.
Yes, no, there is. But that's also is the main kind of jigsaw puzzle of all of this, is that it comes down to price.
Yes.
And it's like, yes, we want everybody to buy slow fashion, but for slow fashion to be truly, sustainable, the prices have to be higher. But these times are so tough that who has that, So that's where fast fashion, all that comes in to kind of feed the market to be like, well, not everybody can afford a $65 shirt.
For sure, yeah.
So figuring that part out is the hardest part, because
yes,
if I totally get that if somebody's on a budget, like we all are, okay, I don't have that for this or whatever. Maybe I'm not into the clothing, whatever, so I'm getting something cheap. So it's like, really, in my mind, not shaming the consumer, because the consumer, I totally empathize with them. We are the consumer.
Yes.
So it's just like, just talking about it and being like, hey, this is what it is. Hopefully we can get to a better place where prices are, everybody just has more money in their pocket. I would love it if everybody, just this country, people actually got money to spend. It didn't have to just be a pandemic for people to feel like they were okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's one of those things, right, where, for me, like, you're right. It's like really understanding like that market, right, where you're like, oh, well, maybe people don't have that money to spend on this thing. And even if they did, like, it's like there's priorities, right, where you're like, hey, do I buy this or do I buy that? And I totally understand that. And I get that, but it is creating one of those kind of like things where it's like it's an ecosystem and we all have to like basically like it has to flow. It has to flow together, because if we are going to make changes, we as a company should look at things differently, but also as a consumer, you should look at things differently. And so it's not about basically being like, well, you're not inexpensive, so we can't buy you. It's like you could support the business in so many different ways. You don't have to buy anything, And so understanding it in those kind of things where it's like, look, we have a lot of people that they're like, we love what you do, but I haven't been able to buy something. And it's like, that's totally fine. Like, we send out coupon codes all the time through like our mailing list. We have all kinds of like fun stuff that we do where, we'll be like, name the song. And then like we send like a code or whatever, but it's like really thinking about it in that, in this time where it's like, we've been thinking about having like a 40 and under rack, and things like that. And so, we really want to make sure that we as a brand are accessible, but also we also want you guys to understand that it's like sometimes it is hard to basically cut a lot of costs on some of the things.
And I also have to interject that sometimes fast fashion, it can be more size friendly.
Okay.
Size inclusive, I would say, because they always have every freaking size, and sometimes I notice with our slow fashion, it can be tricky. I know you as a tailor, you have been able to like make stuff bigger, smaller, do all kinds of stuff. So that's cool. That's kind of like the secret weapon of it, but not every slow fashion brand could offer sizing, in every, just in, because everything's one of one.
Yes. So everything is one of one.
Gotta think about that too.
So I think that one of the things that like we've really have been wanting to have people understand is that like, if you see something that you like, it's not in your size or color or whatever, we could make something special for you. We can, because we make everything here. So we can. But it's also one of those things where, we really do want people to to be able to see it like that, because it's like what you're seeing in the front of the shop is made in the back of the shop. And so that's the beautiful thing, where you could basically be like, wow, you could come in here and you could watch your shirt get made. You know, it's like, I don't know where you could do that, you know? And it's like, I feel like that has always been an ugly thing, where you want to hide the production floor because people are like, whoa, there's a lot of like unethical things happening, or, you know, sometimes people are crammed under things and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But it's like, for us, we feel that there's a beauty in that, and like being able to see where your stuff is being made. There's something beautiful about that.
I think that's a great place to end this today, unless you had any other things that you would like to add.
I don't think so.
I feel like
I
you
think,
got a lot off your brain today.
yeah.
You know,
I feel like I took a
well, it was always great seeing you. I hope that, like I said, we've been trying to get this interview for a long time.
Thank you
You're
for
super
having
busy,
me.
so no, thank you for coming, and hopefully we can talk again in the future when you're running for something else.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Let's
bye.
shake our hands.
Oh. All right. Let's make sure this one. Yeah, boom. 1 hour and 2 minutes. Look at this.
Wow, we know when to stop. I gotta go pee.
Okay.